So I want to show you something. Here's a video of a Tesla bot sorting through blocks. And although it looks really mundane and like nothing really is going on, there's a very small motion in there that proves that this robot has a human brain. And it's right there. It's right there. Super small. It's like you would miss it if you're not really paying a lot of really close attention to that. But here's why this is such a big deal. So about 2 years ago, Tesla had this thing called AI Day, which is a presentation of all the things they're working on as far as artificial intelligence goes. And the one thing they ended on was this Optimus robot, which is designed to be a humanoid robot that's supposed to be doing jobs that humans can as well. In the presentation, it was just a person in a suit. They were just dancing around, but they did have some specifications of what they thought the robot could do. And now fast forward about 2 years, and Tesla just showed this video of this robot doing some sorting and some other things as well. But that specific motion that I showed you at the beginning of the video, how the robot learned to do that is a really big deal. And it involves artificial intelligence and tools that make the robot think like a human. Now, the way Tesla does this is that they're utilizing a lot of hardware in the form of chips and a very unique way of processing information using neural nets, which is allowing them to almost have a quote unquote AI brain at the headquarters that can process a lot of data. And this is extremely similar to how Tesla does their self-driving system right now with their cars. Tesla essentially has a fleet of cars out there in the world. I think they just broke 5 million cars globally. Almost all these cars on the road right now have cameras that gather video using the 8 cameras around the car. And what Tesla does, it takes all the video from the cars, it compiles it, it sends it back to the mothership. And with the latest version that they released with the self-driving software, which is called version 12, they have an AI brain that is made up of a bunch of NVIDIA chips and soon to be Dojo chips, which are Tesla's in-house chips. And then they built a software that can take all this data, pass it through that hardware, and then an AI brain looks at the video and says, okay, there's a car at a stop sign. Every time it looks like there is this octagon looking thing or this hexagon looking thing, depending on the country you're in, that is red and it says stop, then I'm going to stop. If it has a light above the car that's green, that means go. If there's a line in front of me, that's probably where I want to stop at the stop sign. But the crazy thing there is that there's no human code that told the car to do that. Instead of that, the AI brain looked at a bunch of videos of proper driving and on its own developed, let's say, a language on how to interpret those things. So no human was there coding saying, if stop sign, stop. And now with this bot, the company seems to have figured out how to pass that on to its humanoid robot. And that's such a huge deal. If we look at specifically how the robot was able to pick that block back up and then fix it, what's probably happening here based on the guidance that we got from Tesla on the video itself and how their self-driving cars work is that the robot learned how to sort these blocks into their proper areas by analyzing a bunch of video of humans doing the same exact thing. And so it probably saw a lot of humans taking the block and then putting the blue one in the blue section, the green one in the green section. But more importantly, it saw them doing that so that the block lands on the right orientation. And if we look at the video here, you can see that the robot accidentally dropped the block on its side, and then it paused for a second, and then it picked it back up and fixed it. And there's no human code in there that told it to do that. That is freaking crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Let me walk you through an example as to why that's such a big deal. Let's go ahead and look at a video of somebody shoveling to drive this point home really deeply. So here's a person picking up dirt with a shovel and putting it into a wheelbarrow. So in this video, a human knows that if you're going to use the shovel, you probably want it right side up so you can pick up the dirt and put it in the wheelbarrow. You want proper leverage with your knees, lean with your back so you're not crushing your back, and use your body and your knees to pick up the dirt and put it in the wheelbarrow. Now, the human or robot in this case will be able to learn this by just looking at people shoveling. And this really highlights the complexity of the real world. As humans, we're very good at analyzing what's around us. We're very good at dynamically adjusting to any specific thing that we're facing while we're doing the thing. If you're at work and your job is manual, there's little things that happen in that specific job that could make you adjust where your hand goes, or adjust how you use your knees, or adjust how you use your shoulders, or even problem solve something breaks. Typically what happens in robotics is you have to have code and robots that are built specifically for those use cases to handle that, versus the route that Tesla is taking, which is a lot more generalized. It's about building a robot that's meant to do things that any human could, and instead of humans writing the code to tell it to do that, you just give it a bunch of video and the robot will learn how to do that. And again, that block example is a very, very small microcosm of what that means, because the robot on its own decided, based on the video that it saw, that it had to place the block down with the right orientation. Nobody had to write that. That's a huge, huge deal. Now, this has a lot of far-reaching implications. A lot of this is going to sound like complete science fiction, but I promise you this will be here a lot sooner than most people think. Let me walk you through why that is. If you're enjoying the video so far, I would love it if you throw me a like. And if you want to support the channel, super easy. All you have to do is click subscribe. Thank you so much. So now we can let our imagination run wild in situations where this bot can actually be super helpful, right? If you're somebody who hates folding clothes, there's going to be a way for the bot to look at somebody fold clothes and it will fold clothes for you. Or you hate mopping the floors, it will learn how to mop the floors. If you hate vacuuming, it's going to learn how to vacuum. You hate shoveling, you hate doing lawn work, you hate pushing a lawnmower. There's so many different applications for this specific type of use case, because now you have a robot that's shaped like a human, that thinks like a human, and learns like a human. If Tesla figures out how to make these things reliably, it can scale them, and it can be affordable, this is going to bring two very, very disruptive things. One that's going to be extremely good, and one that could potentially be extremely bad. And I'm going to show you why this is by using a real world example. And feel free to do this at home. Think of a job that the bot could do by just looking at another person doing it, and it figures out how to do that same thing. Probably something that's repetitive and boring and sort of easy to start. Say it doesn't have a huge learning curve, but something that's useful to society. For my example, I'm going to use a maid. A maid today gets paid about 15 bucks an hour in the United States. And let's assume a normal work week of 40 hours per week. And so if we extrapolate this over a year's worth of work, it's about $32,000 a year that somebody would pay for a maid. Now, if we look at the Tesla bot and we try to figure out how much something like this would cost, Elon Musk, who's the CEO of Tesla, who's building this bot right now, has said in the past that the bot should be priced around the average price of a car-ish. I'm going to assume $50,000 just to be on the higher end of that assumption from the CEO of the company. Now, there's an excerpt from the Elon Musk biography that Walter Isaacson released a couple weeks ago, where Elon and his engineering team are talking about how long should this bot work for between charges, and the goal seems to be around 16 hours. So essentially this means that the bot's going to be able to work at least 2 shifts in a day. Each shift would be 8 hours like a human, and there's 24 hours in a day, and 16 hours would equal to 2 shifts. And so now that the bot is designed to work about 16 hours a day, and you assume that it can work over the weekends because it's not a person, it doesn't need vacation, it doesn't need to rest, it just has to charge. If you extrapolate that over the course of a year, that's roughly 5,800 hours versus a maid's 2,080 hours if they work 40-hour weeks for 52 weeks. And so what this means is that over the course of a year, the bot is going to be able to work 3 times more than the maid, because it doesn't have to rest over the weekend, and it can work 2 shifts in one day. And if we apply the same hourly rate to the bot versus the maid of 15 bucks an hour, this means that over the course of a year, if you wanted to pay a maid the same amount of time then the bot would be able to work in a year, you would have to pay the maid $87,000 in 1 year versus paying $50,000 one time for the bot. So in the first year, you've already saved about 53% of your costs by going with this human or robot in this Tesla bot versus the maid. But here's the crazier thing. This means that in the second year, you would save $87,000 because you don't have to pay the bot. It's not a human. So of course, you sit down and you think about that for a second. And you think about all the other jobs that can apply to this Tesla bot in the long term as it learns through more video. The reality is that once a company figures out the hardware piece and figures out how to manufacture a robot, the key limiting factor there has been how the robot interacts with its environments, how it interacts with the shovel, how it interacts with the block, without someone sitting down and explicitly telling a robot how to do those things, by just learning like a human brain would, by just observing. And once we get to that point, you now open up a situation where specific jobs can be heavily disrupted because it's so much cheaper to employ a bot versus a human. And I'm sure your head's already spinning with what this possibly could mean from a societal perspective. But let's talk about the two very obvious ones. I don't know if I should start with the positive or negative one, so I'll just go with the positive one, hopefully, because I'm more positive in nature. This is going to dramatically lower the cost of goods and services. What this means now is that for certain jobs, a lot of these physical jobs where a robot can come in, theoretically, as long as companies price them fairly, they should be able to do jobs and produce goods and services that are significantly cheaper than they are today, which is going to dramatically open a part of the economy to people that have never had access to one before. If these robots can be employed to build cars, to build homes, in theory, a lot of that labor cost that goes into hiring people goes down dramatically, basically goes away. And now you have homes and cars, theoretically, that would cost so much less because you remove a lot of those costs because it's way cheaper to not pay a robot than to pay a human. But the flip side of that, and this is where I hope this video starts a conversation from a societal perspective, is that what happens to all the jobs that are out there right now that the bot could also do? And how quick will that disruption be? Is this going to happen over 10 to 20 years' time? Is this going to happen gradually? Is this going to happen suddenly? My big concern here is that the ability for this technology to learn is severely underrated. Now that Tesla has figured out how to do it with video and just putting it into this AI brain, and the freaking robot just learns how to do things. Again, we're very early stages. Once they figure out the actuators to make them strong enough so that it can lift certain weights, they're really limited by the amount of clips and the amount of hardware that they can process to get to that point where more and more jobs are being displaced. It's quite obvious that having technology that can be super helpful to humans to do things that perhaps we don't want to do, that are dangerous, that are boring, that are repetitive, or things that are super, super valuable to humanity from a product and service perspective, to have help doing that, it seems like a no-brainer. It's going to lower costs, it's going to lower injuries, it's going to lower the amount of people that have to work jobs that they don't want to work. But on the flip side, what will be out there for us to do, especially when it comes to physical work? The more and more you go into the future, the more and more likely this becomes. And so what do we have to do from a societal perspective to make sure that this gives us a good outcome? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.